Chapter 31. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator, Transin Editor, Transin. I have reached the medium state of the Yellow Realm, but indeed, I only managed to develop 19 meridians. After 3 days' practice, Zhang Ruo Chen developed 8 meridians one by one. He finally reached the medium state of the Yellow Realm. The powerful genuine Qi quickly ran through the 19 meridians, filling his whole body, and then an unprecedented strong power came from his meridians. The fifth prince, who reached the final state, had only developed 12 meridians. However, Zhang Ruo Chen, who just reached the medium state, had developed 19 meridians. It meant that his body of martial arts had become exceedingly powerful. In his last lifetime, he developed 20 meridians when he was in the medium state of the Yellow Realm, just one more than this time. I have practiced once in the savage god's pool and absorbed a great deal of power of blood, making my body more powerful. But it still can't compare with the one in the last lifetime. Of course, I have some advantages that I never had in the last lifetime: powerful spiritual power and a rich practice experience. If I want to catch up with Chi Yao's martial cultivation, I must do better than that of my last lifetime and open up more meridians. Therefore, I need to make my body become more powerful than it was last lifetime. I have to open up all the 36 meridians from the graph of meridians in the scripture of Emperor Ming's Empyrean. Zhang Ruo Chen walked out of the internal space of the time and space spinel, cleaned up the dirt he made when he developed his meridians, and then practiced in the yard. Bang! Bang! Once he slapped, bang, echoed in the air. Now, even if he did not utilize the dragon and elephant prajna palm, he could also exert the strength of 16 bulls. If he utilized the dragon and elephant prajna palm, he could break out the strength of 25 bulls with the power of his palm. With his current power, he could defeat Situ Linjiang with 3 palms. He also could compare well with the warriors who had reached the completion of the Yellow Realm. Zhang Ruo Chen's combat effectiveness had advanced to a high level only in a few days. There were more maidservants and eunuchs to serve concubine Lin and Zhang Ruo Chen after they moved back to the Jade Palace. Since his gift of martial arts was exposed at the year-end assessment, Zhang Ruo Chen had begun to openly practice in the courtyard. A beautiful girl with a flush of shyness on her snow-white face, of about 15 or 16, obsessively gazed at Zhang Ruo Chen practicing in the courtyard. She thought, "The 9th prince is so excellent, and I have heard that he could even defeat the 5th prince and the 6th prince. He is regarded as a genius of martial arts by the whole palace." Naturally, people always respected a superior. Girls always admired the geniuses as well. Seeing Zhang Ruo Chen practicing, an older maidservant with something strange flashing in her eyes slipped away from the Jade Palace to a rockery in the palace. The maidservant knelt down and respectfully said, "Miss Han, the 9th prince had released himself from refining. His cultivation has reached the medium state of the Yellow Realm." The girl in front of the maidservant wore a light green dress. She was slender and appeared to be 18 or 19. She was Han Qingluo, one of the 4 close female guards of the queen. The 4 close female guards were also the apprentices trained by the queen. With powerful cultivations and special skills in killing, they eliminated dissidents for the queen. The queen had ordered Han Qingluo to assassinate the 9th prince. With her hands behind her back and contemptuous mirth on her face, Han Qingluo said, "At the martial arts competition, the cultivation of Zhang Ruo Chen had reached the peak of the dawn state of the Yellow Realm. What's more, he had absorbed the power of blood in the savage god's pool. It would be strange if he hadn't reached the medium state of the Yellow Realm with his talent." With a murderous look, Han Qingluo continue to observe him, and report it to me once he leaves the palace." The maidservant assented. "Yes." After saying that, the maidservant returned to the Jade Palace. After finishing his practice, Zhang Ruo Chen went back to his room and entered the internal space of the time and space spinel. Sitting with his legs crossed in the center of the internal space, Zhang Ruo Chen took out an energy pill, ate it, and started to refine. With his current cultivation, he was able to absorb all the pill spirit of the energy pill without any waste. It only took him 2 hours to absorb all of the pill spirit of the energy pill and convert it into genuine Qi. After Zhang Ruo Chen reached the medium state, the capacity of his Qi pool had become 10 times bigger. But only 1 energy pill spirit could not increase his genuine Qi much for his Qi pool. he spent another 2 hours absorbing the remaining 2 energy pills. The genuine qi only increased by 20% with 3 energy pills. Zhang Ruochen would have to eat hundreds of energy pills to fill his qi pool with genuine qi. I must buy some pills of a higher class because the energy pills are having a decreasing effect on me. They will be useless once I reach the final state of the yellow realm. Both energy pills and refining powder were first-class pills. They had great effects on warriors in the lower realms. But as the warrior's cultivation increased, the effects of the first-class pills started decreasing, requiring warriors to eat second-class pills in order to maintain their rate of practice. Zhang Ruochen was about to leave the internal space of time and space spinel to buy some pills of a higher class when he suddenly noticed the stone platform. On the stone platform was a scroll and a silver iron book, the mystery of time and space. My cultivation has reached the medium state of the yellow realm. Maybe I can open up the scroll. The scroll was so heavy that Zhang Ruochen could not even pick it up when he was at the initial stage of the yellow realm. According to the mystery of time and space, only after Zhang Ruochen reached the dawn state of the yellow realm would he be able to open up the scroll. Zhang Ruochen operated his genuine qi, converged it in his right arm, grasped the scroll, and slowly picked it up. The scroll was so heavy. It had to be at least 1,000 pounds. Zhang Ruochen controlled his power to slowly spread the scroll on the ground. The scroll was a magnificent catalogue of reckless waste with lofty mountains, torrential ancient rivers, steep cliffs, and a giant old tree in the middle of the scroll. The old tree was atop the clouds. Its roots were as big as a mountain and as long as a dragon. Every leaf could cover a lake. With a little smile, Zhang Ruochen shook his head and thought, how can there be such a giant tree in the world? Suddenly, he heard a voice. Who says there can't be? You are so ignorant that even don't recognize the divine tree called the sacred prime tree that supports the entire Kunlun Field. I'm really disappointed. Being slightly astonished, Zhang Ruochen looked around in the internal space only and found no one. Where did that voice come from? In an alert state, Zhang Ruochen asked in a sinking voice, who is speaking? The voice came again. Can't you see me in the painting? In the painting? Zhang Ruochen felt astonished and asked, are you the sacred prime tree? According to history, it was cut down in the medieval ancient times. The sound came again. In medieval ancient times? Zhang Ruochen nodded and said, the medieval ancient times was around 100,000 years ago. By the way, are you really the sacred prime tree? Is the legendary tree something that really exists? The voice said with a sigh, how could it be? As you are saying the sacred prime tree has been cut down, then how could I be a tree? Zhang Ruochen gazed at the scroll and asked again, who are you? The voice answered, I'm not a human being. Zhang Ruochen said, the voice said, I'm a cat. Then it continued, you can't look down on me. I have a famous name, the King of Slaughter. A superior like me is unable to be worn down by time. Even if 100,000 years have passed by, I will still play an important role in history. Young man, you must have heard of my name, haven't you? Thinking for a while, Zhang Ruochen shook his head and replied. No. Suddenly, Zhang Ruochen found that there was a black cat that was as small as a grain of rice under the sacred prime tree. No one could find it unless they looked carefully. Are you a cat or a painting? Zhang Ruochen felt strange and asked. It sighed. I've told you, I'm the King of Slaughter. I was sealed in the scroll because I did something wrong in the past. Now, only you can release me. Why am I the only one who can set you free? Zhang Ruochen asked, because you have opened up the sacred mark of time and space. You can drive the power of space to open the seal of the painting. It is known that, from ancient times to now, only a few humans have developed the sacred mark of time and space. Young man, you are so lucky. After knowing what it was, he laughed and asked, why should I set you free? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 32. You are listening at NavelFull.audio. Translator, Transin Editor, Transin, Saint Monk Shimi sealed me in this painting, hoping that I could confess and overcome all of my weaknesses. He wanted me to help the next warrior with a time and space sacred mark to study the mystery of time and space so that warrior could become the strongest warrior on earth. That voice said again, if you don't free me, how can I show you the mystery of time and space? And if I don't show you the mystery of time and space, how can you become the strongest warrior? You were sealed by Saint Monk Xumi in the painting. Zhang Ruo Chen could not believe that cat's words because they sounded ridiculous. It had to be important for Saint Monk Xumi to seal it in the painting. It could not be that simple that it only had done something bad. Saint Monk Xumi, who had obtained a time and space sacred mark, wrote the mystery of time and space. He was a famous saint back in medieval ancient times and records about him could be found in history. That voice said with a sigh, who else can unleash the power of sealing the space except for Saint Monk Xumi? He is the only person who can open up a world in the painting. However, without a doubt, you can do that easily as well after you have become stronger. You said that you could show me how to practice the mystery of time and space, right? In other words, you can use the power of time and space as well, right? Asked Zhang Ruo Chen. That voice said, of course, my cultivation is unparalleled. I can do everything. However, without a time and space sacred mark, I can't use the power of time and space. But, I used to be with Saint Monk Xumi, so I have unconsciously developed a deep understanding of time and space. Obviously, I have no problem with teaching you at all. Now you can finally turn to the second page of the mystery of time and space. Zhang Ruo Chen picked up the mystery of time and space and turned to the second page. He saw some silver words on this page. Inscription of space. On the second page, 8 fundamental inscriptions of space, which represented the 8 grids of space, were recorded. They were, inscription of pointy, inscription of line type, inscription of lengthways, inscription of transverse type, inscription of height, inscription of flat type, inscription of strain type, and inscription of condensing. In short, pointy, line type, lengthways, transverse type, height, flat type, strain type, and condensing. A voice came out from the painting. Only 8 fundamental inscriptions of space are recorded on the second page. If you can practice these 8 inscriptions well, basically you open up a small space by yourself. However, even so, you won't be able to attack enemies with the power of the space. You have to learn advanced level inscriptions of space, such as inscription of seal, inscription of collapse, inscription of crack, inscription of transmission, etc. It is more important for you to practice these 8 basic inscriptions well. Zhang Ruo Chen asked, why does this page record 8 basic inscriptions of space only? What about inscriptions of time? Ha! Time is flowing continuously. Nobody can create time. Therefore, we don't have inscriptions of time. However, for a warrior with a time and space sacred mark, he can practice his mark of time and utilize the power of time in order to use time spiritual techniques. If your spiritual power is strong enough, and if you can practice your mark of time well, you can easily cut 10 years off your enemy's life expectancy with one finger. You can even stop time, speed up time, slow down time, etc. in an independent space. Time has an amazing power. Even if your cultivation is high, you can't compete against time. Neither can you defend yourself against time well. With your current level of spiritual power, you can't practice the mark of time, you can only do the 8 basic inscriptions of space. Zhang Ruo Chen asked, so practicing inscriptions of space and the mark of time require amazingly strong spiritual power, is that correct? That voice laughed. Free me from the painting first, and then I will let you know. Zhang Ruo Chen hesitated a bit. He was uncertain whether or not it would be a good thing to do that. Don't hesitate. I have great unrivaled cultivation. However, I'm not interested in you at all, young man. Free me and I promise you that I will tell you more secrets about time and space. I will help you utilize the power of the time and space sacred mark. Is this a good thing or bad thing? That's the problem. However, if it's a bad thing, it can't be avoided easily. It will happen anyway. If Saint Monk Xumi considered it a threat, he should have killed it, rather than just sealing it inside a painting. Zhang Ruo Chen thought for a while and asked, how can I free you from the painting? Just a drop of blood will be enough. Once you drop it onto the painting, you'll become the painting's owner. Inject your genuine chi into it, then you will be able to break the seal and free me, said that voice with great excitement. Zhang Ruo Chen used his nail to break the skin of his right index finger, leaving a bloody line on his fingertip. A crimson drop of blood from his fingertip dribbled onto the painting. With a ta sound, the droplet was absorbed by the painting. Boom. A light layer of blood covered the painting. The painting suddenly flew into Zhang Ruo Chen's hand. It should be noted that the painting was 1,000 pounds, however, Zhang Ruo Chen made it fly to his hand with his spiritual power. It was incredible. It's an amazing treasure. Other genuine martial arms can't be compared to it at all. After having become the owner of this painting, Zhang Ruo Chen could clearly sense that every line on the painting was an inscription. There were inscriptions of space, inscriptions of ice series, inscriptions of power series, inscription of earth series, inscription of fire series, etc. All kinds of inscriptions were on the painting, and they were uncountable. That's why Saint Monk Shimi was the greatest saint in medieval ancient times. Even his painting is beyond others' cognition. Zhang Ruo Chen unleashed his spiritual power and the painting was turned into a white light and flew into the sacred mark on his glabella. Then it reached his chi pool. The painting was hung in the middle of the chi pool. It was rotating slowly with shallow white light. Boom. Zhang Ruo Chen unleashed his spiritual power again. Now the painting flew out of the chi pool and was back in his hand. The voice said again, the painting is called the yin-yang wooden graph. Its paper is made of a tree leaf from the sacred prime tree. It took Saint Monk Shimi 10 years to finish the drawing, and it cost him great spiritual power. Young man, now you can free me, right? Of course. Although Zhang Ruo Chen agreed to free the cat, inside his mind he was still uncertain. He could not fully trust the cat. Zhang Ruo Chen injected his genuine chi into the scroll. The scroll was shining and shaking slightly. Boom. A black light flew out of the painting and fell to the ground. It became a 1 meter tall, giant black cat. That cat was as large as a hog and fat with soft black fur. Its golden eyes were even bigger than Zhang Ruo Chen's fists. Zhang Ruo Chen had seen cats before, however, it was his first time to see such a large, fat cat. Ha! Finally, I am out. It's been 100,000 years. 100,000 years. That fat, black, cat spoke like a human being, which was weird. Suddenly, that fat, black cat bared its sharp teeth, with a ferocious gaze in its round eyes. It rushed toward Zhang Ruo Chen and roared, "Kiddo, I'm the king of slaughter. I can kill you with a claw." Ha! It rushed at Zhang Ruo Chen, reaching out a sharp paw toward his neck. Its body seemed fat and bloated, but it was super fast. It moved like a black shadow. Zhang Ruo Chen had been vigilant against the cat before the paw was coming toward him. Zhang Ruo Chen hit the cat with his palm on its giant face. The cat whined, and his tongue was almost outside his mouth. The cat was thrown backward. Bang! It hit on the internal space of the time and space spinel and fell to the ground like a dead pig. Zhang Ruo Chen looked at his palm and then glanced at the cat on the ground. He frowned slightly and asked, "Are you really the king of slaughter?" That giant, black cat stamped the ground with its paws and gnashed. "Young man, how dare you doubt my ability? If it wasn't for my cultivation being sealed in the painting, it would be a piece of cake to kill you." "Oh no, what are you doing? Help. I was just kidding. I am such a nice guy, why would I kill others?" "What are you? Oh no, no." Zhang Ruo Chen carried the cat's tail and dragged it to the center of the space. He stepped on its abdomen with the flash shining sword in his hand. He injected his genuine chi into the flash shining sword and all of a sudden, 3 inscriptions of power series in the sword were activated. The weight of the sword reached 500 pounds suddenly. "Fatty, do you really think that I will believe you again?" Zhang Ruo Chen held the sword with both his hands and stabbed abruptly downward. Suddenly, a scary power was unleashed from the cat's body. The cat turned its body and escaped out of Zhang Ruo Chen's control and hid in a corner. With its tail upturned, the cat shined shallow black lights and said, "Young man, you must calm down. When you do things, remember not to act on rash impulse. I was just testing your cultivation. How would I try to kill you? Besides that, with my unrivaled cultivation, if I plan to kill you, do you really think that you can get the chance to fight back? Are you serious? With the flash shining sword in his hand, Zhang Ruo Chen walked toward the cat one step at a time and swayed the sword. Shit, you really think that I am afraid of you? If we really fight against each other, it doesn't mean that I will be weaker than you. The cat reached out his sharp paw and grabbed the flash shining sword. It roared loudly, meow. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 33. You are listening at NavelFull.audio. Translator, Transin Editor, Transin. Zhang Ruo Chen retracted the flash shining sword and quickly stabbed it out again. The sword pierced through the breach between the paws of that giant black cat and hit on its glabella. This made a metal crashing sound and some sparks struck out, bang. The flash shining sword was a 4th-class genuine martial arm. However, it could not break the cat's defense. The cultivation of the cat isn't that strong. It isn't more powerful than a warrior in the dawn state of the Yellow Realm. Why does it have such formidable defensive power? Ha! Although I am one realm lower than you, my indestructibility, great martial technique, and spiteful means can help me defeat those who are 3 realms higher than me. With my current power, even a warrior in the completion of the Yellow Realm can't defeat me. Young man, go to hell. Meow. That giant black cat rushed at Zhang Ruo Chen again and jumped 2 meters high. It opened its big mouth and tried to bite Zhang Ruo Chen's shoulder, sacred breaking plum sword. Genuine chi was running through Zhang Ruo Chen's entire body. He waved his sword at the cat. Meanwhile, the sword had broken out 7 sword breaths. When the flash shining sword was right in front of the cat, the 7 sword breaths gathered together and hit the cat's chin. The cat screamed again and fell to the ground. Ah! That hurts. Young man, why do you have such strong power? You're just in the medium state of the Yellow Realm. How can you unleash the power of a warrior in the completion? Do you think you're the only one who has a great physical quality? If we were in the same realm, I would probably be weaker than you. However, I have a higher realm than you now. You're not capable enough to fight against me, said Zhang Ruo Chen with his sword in his hand. The cat was strong indeed. If they were in the same realm, Zhang Ruo Chen could barely defeat it because of its strong indestructibility. Being an immortal, there was no blade or spear that could cut through it. Seeing Zhang Ruo Chen coming closer, it said, young man, as we both can't defeat each other, why do we still have to fight? We will be wasting our time if we continue fighting each other. Why don't we sit down and talk peacefully? The cat's defensive power was so strong that even the flash shining sword could not break the defense of its body. If they continued fighting, Zhang Ruo Chen could only defeat it rather than kill it. Zhang Ruo Chen stopped and said, if you can answer some of my questions, we can probably talk peacefully for now. The cat sat on the ground with its belly stuck out. It said comfortably, go ahead. I know everything from 100,000 years ago and can predict what will happen in the next 100,000 years. Whether you want to know something up in the sky or underground, or anywhere else on earth, there is nothing that I don't know. Why did Saint Monk Shimi seal you in the yin-yang wooden graph? Asked Zhang Ruo Chen. Well, that's a long story. Back then, I had committed horrible crimes. Saint Monk Shimi thought I was sinful, so he sealed me up, said the cat, with its big ears shaking slightly and eyes spinning. What kind of horrible crimes, said Zhang Ruo Chen. I had killed millions of people, triggered human disasters, killed dragons and took out their gallbladders, set fires in the sky and oceans. Well, I think that's it, said the cat. Zhang Ruo Chen stared at the cat's fat body and said, well, you don't seem like a killer. Yes. You read my mind. That monk was unreasonable. He sentenced me incorrectly and sealed me in that graph. I don't even know to whom to complain to. The cat lay on the ground, shook its head, and sighed with its belly stuck out. Zhang Ruo Chen said, those who don't look like bad guys can sometimes turn out to be very bad. Likewise, those who don't look like good people can do great stuff sometimes. I'm just a cat, please don't judge me or misunderstand me. Hey, young man, what are you doing? Asked the cat, Phew. The cat had been sealed in the Yin-Yang wooden graph again, as expected. The power of the Yin-Yang wooden graph can keep you down. Now I am the owner of this graph, so as long as I want, I can seal you in the graph. Zhang Ruo Chen smiled with the graph in his hand, Young man. You should stay calm and set me free me. I promise you that you'll have my loyalty forever. If you ask me to catch fish, I won't dare to catch a rat, said the cat worriedly. The cat had been sealed in the graph for 100,000 years and had finally regained its freedom. Undoubtedly, it hated to be sealed again. Zhang Ruo Chen ignored the cat and put the Yin-Yang wooden graph aside. He started studying the 8 basic inscriptions of space, young man. If you want to carve the basic inscriptions of space, you must at least cultivate your spiritual power up to the 12th level. How old are you now? How can you possess such strong spiritual power? Release me and I'll teach you how to practice your spiritual power. The cat's voice came out of the graph, the 12th level. Well, my spiritual power has reached the 32nd level already. The basic inscriptions are not difficult to me at all. Zhang Ruo Chen sat on the ground with his legs crossed. He opened the mystery of time and space, put it in front of him, and started studying. How can it be possible? The spiritual power of an ordinary adult is normally at the 10th level. It would be an outstanding achievement to reach a maximum of the 8th level for a young man like you. Even those with great innate spiritual powers can only reach the 15th level at most. How can you reach the 32nd level? The cat was doubtful. Zhang Ruo Chen was not interested in talking to it any longer. He started practicing the first basic inscription of space, the inscription of pointy. The voice came out of the graph again. Did you start practicing your spiritual power when you were a child? No. Even if you started practicing from an early age, you could only have reached the 20th level. How can you have reached the 32nd level? Young man, you are better at boasting than me. Warriors with their spiritual power higher than the 15th level would be able to carve basic inscriptions. However, the basic inscriptions of space were special. They were more complicated and unstable than the basic inscriptions. Only warriors with spiritual power at the 20th level could possibly carve them. Boom. Zhang Ruo Chen pushed his genuine chi into his fingertip and reached out his finger. A light spot was formed. He wanted to carve the inscription of pointy in the air. He had tried more than 30 times and yet, none of them were successful. I knew it. You were totally boasting. Practicing spiritual power to the 20th level is as difficult as climbing into the sky for average warriors. And if they want to carve the basic inscriptions of space, that's even more difficult. The cat teased him. Zhang Ruo Chen stopped and whispered to himself, It's my first time to carve it and it's surely difficult. Let me practice with the spiritual paper and the inscription pen. When alchemists and weapon refiners first started practicing the inscriptions, they all practiced with the inscription pens and spiritual papers. It took them at least 1 year to practice before they carved their first inscription on the spiritual paper. It was Zhang Ruo Chen's first time to practice an inscription. Yet, he wanted to carve it in the air with his finger. It was not surprising that he failed. Zhang Ruo Chen stood up and planned to purchase some inscription pens and spiritual papers. Young man, take me there as well. I promise that I won't make any trouble. I will listen to you. Before the cat finished its words, Zhang Ruo Chen had put the yin-yang wooden graph back into his glabella and walked out the internal space of the time and space spinel. Then, Zhang Ruo Chen left the royal palace and walked toward the martial market. Right after Zhang Ruo Chen had left the palace, a maidservant rushed to the palace where the queen lived and reported Zhang Ruo Chen's activity to Han Qingluo. He's finally leaving the palace. That's wonderful. Get me a troop of soldiers, I'll take them out of the palace. Tonight is going to be the last night for that genius, said Han Qingluo with a cold gaze in her eyes. A hint of an evil smile played on her lips. Zhang Ruo Chen had arrived at the martial market and walked toward the Federation of Inscription. The Federation of Inscription was one of the strongest organizations in Kunlun Field, with a long history. Before the First Central Empire was formed, the Federation of Inscription had already been established. There were 4 alliances under the Federation of Inscription: Alchemist Alliance, Weapon Refiner Alliance, Tamer Alliance, and union of unusual talent, inscription pens and spiritual paper could only be purchased at the Federation of Inscription. The Federation of Inscription had a monopoly over these two goods. They could not be found in any other place. In Kunlun Field, each city had a branch of the Federation of Inscription. The Yinwu Commandery was built magnificently, like a castle. The traffic was always busy outside of the Federation of Inscription. There were warriors as well as alchemists in long blue gowns on the streets. For the alchemists, a tripod was embroidered on the back of their gowns. Other than the alchemists, there was a hammer embroidered on the back of the weapon refiners' gowns. Apart from the alchemists and weapon refiners, there were some tamers riding on savage beasts walking into the Federation of Inscription. There was a middle-aged man wearing a weapon refiner's gown. He looked like he was in his 30s, with his chest stuck out. He loftily walked toward the Federation of Inscription. My lord Xuanhuan. The royal guards who stood outside the Federation of Inscription saluted with a gaze of respect in their eyes. Xuanhuan nodded. He walked into the Federation of Inscription without taking a glance at the royal guards. It's Lord Xuanhuan, the weapon refiner. It is said that he is an amazing second-class weapon refiner with his spiritual power at the 26th level. Lord Xuanhuan has altogether 17 disciples, 8 of which have become first-class weapon refiners. There are countless warriors who want to be mentored by Lord Xuanhuan in all of Yinwu City. I've heard that Lord Xuanhuan has a relatively high requirement for his disciples. Warriors will be rejected if either his spiritual power has not reached the 12th level, or is aged over 20. It is almost impossible for warriors to cultivate their spiritual power up to the 12th level before turning 20 years old. Only the true geniuses can make it. At this moment, Zhang Ruo Chen saw two familiar figures, the 8th Prince Zhang Ji, and the daughter of Master of the Red Cloud sect, Shan Xiangling. They had arrived at the Federation of Inscription as well. After the year-end assessment, the status of Zhang Ji had greatly plummeted in the palace. His biological mother, concubine Xiao, had been banished to the cold palace. Meanwhile, out of the 9 princes, he had become the prince with the lowest cultivation. He was so depressed due to these 2 blows, he had accompanied Shan Xiangling to the Federation of Inscription, hoping that they could apprentice with Lord Xuanhuan, the second-class weapon refiner. In terms of his martial arts talents, he could barely compare to Zhang Ruo Chen. Therefore, he had to discover some way to surpass Zhang Ruo Chen so he could retrieve his status back. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 35. You are listening at NaNovel.audio. Translator, Transin Editor, Transin, Your Highness, if you keep up the hard work with your marvelous gift, you are expected to be a first-class weapon refiner within 5 years, Xuanhuan said with high praise. The 8th prince became even more arrogant. Zhang Ruo Chen and Shan Xiangling walked over to the 8th prince and Xuanhuan. My lord Xuanhuan, I'm Shan Xiangling from the Red Cloud sect. Here is a letter from my father. Shan Xiangling handed him the letter. Xuanhuan opened and read the letter. He glanced at Shan Xiangling from head to toe and said, Your father mentioned that your spiritual power has reached the 16th level. Is that true? Shan Xiangling nodded with consent. Yes, that's correct. Xuanhuan folded the letter and said, Your father, Master of the Red Cloud sect, and I are good old friends. Since you have such talent, I'll take you as my disciple. From now on, you are my 19th disciple. Shan Xiangling was delighted. She hurriedly bowed and said, Mr. Zhua, please accept my respect. That's wonderful. Junior sister apprentice, I'm also one of the disciples of Lord Xuanhuan. We can practice spiritual power, learn how to carve inscriptions, and refine weapons together, the 8th prince said with excitement. Shan Xiangling ignored the 8th prince and introduced Zhang Ruo Chen to Xuanhuan. She said, My lord, this is the 9th prince of the Yinwu Commandery. He wants to ask you questions about the inscriptions. Xuanhuan glanced at Zhang Ruo Chen and said, If you want to be my disciple, you have to meet the following requirements. First, you must be aged under 20. Second, your spiritual power must reach at least the 20th level. It doesn't matter if you're a prince, if you can't meet these 2 requirements, you are not qualified to be my disciple. The 8th prince sneered. In his opinion, no doubt Zhang Ruo Chen had a great talent for practicing martial arts. Yet, his talent for spiritual power was not as strong as his. Zhang Ruo Chen looked at Xuanhuan and said, "Wait. You misunderstand me. I just want to ask you a few questions about the inscriptions rather than apprentice to you." When other warriors saw Xuanhuan, they all had always behaved respectfully, which made him get used to being a superior. He felt annoyed as Zhang Ruo Chen stood himself upright to talk to him. Zhang Ruo Chen was not being arrogant. He just wanted to communicate with Xuanhuan in an equal manner. In fact, his spiritual power was much stronger than Xuanhuan's, and he did not need to look up to Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan groaned. "Humph. You're aiming too high, young man. Listen, if you want to carve the inscriptions, you have to practice your spiritual power. The higher level of your spiritual power, the higher possibility to carve the inscriptions. Yet, you will not succeed if your spiritual power is under the 15th level. Young man, have you reached the 15th level?" Zhang Ruo Chen asked, "Do you mean that once I cultivate to the 15th level, you'll help me out with carving inscriptions?" "Ha! Only warriors who cultivate to the 15th level can be my disciples. Unless you've reached the 20th level, don't even think about communicating equally with me about inscriptions." Xuanhuan said arrogantly. In fact, the person whose spiritual power had reached the 20th level usually became a second-class weapon refiner. Every upgrade was extremely difficult after reaching the 15th level. It was as difficult as climbing into the sky as it was to reach the 20th level. That explained why the second-class weapon refiners were rare. Even the Red Cloud sect could not hire one, the 20th level. "Let me try." Then, Zhang Ruo Chen stared at the sacred testing stone. He headed over to it and put his hands on it, the 20th level. He has never practiced spiritual power, how could he have reached the 20th level? The 8th prince sneered and thought. Xuanhuan said, "You're crazy. Even a talented genius of spiritual power can't reach the 20th level before 20 years old." Shan Xiangling was curious, but she believed that Zhang Ruo Chen would only do things that he was sure of. Is his spiritual power really that incredible? Zhang Ruo Chen closed his eyes and injected his spiritual power into the sacred testing stone. Boom. There were circles of light streaks that appeared on the surface of the sacred testing stone. 1 circle, 2 circles, 3 circles. Every circle represented a level of spiritual power. When Xuanhuan saw 20 circles on the rock surface, he was so shocked and stared at Zhang Ruo Chen with surprise, as if he was a monster. "It can't happen, it's impossible," the 8th prince murmured as his face turned pale. He could not believe what he just saw. Shan Xiangling was also shocked. She stared at Zhang Ruo Chen with adoration in her eyes. When the circles had added up to 20, Zhang Ruo Chen stopped releasing his spiritual power and withdrew his palms. Xuanhuan knew that Zhang Ruo Chen did not do his best because his spiritual power was definitely higher than the 20th level. He had changed his attitude immediately. He welcomed Zhang Ruo Chen and said, "Your Highness, you are definitely a master of spiritual power, please forgive my offense." At the age of 16, his spiritual power could advance past the 20th level. His future achievements are going to be beyond imagination. Who knows if I'll need his help in the future? Thinking about this, Xuanhuan immediately showed his kindness to Zhang Ruo Chen. Zhang Ruo Chen said, "I just want to consult you about the inscriptions and skills of carving." "No problem. Your Highness, please follow me. Let's go to a quiet place to share the knowledge of spiritual power and inscriptions," Xuanhuan said happily. Zhang Ruo Chen nodded and headed for the audience hall of the Federation of Inscription with Xuanhuan, followed by Shan Xiangling. The 8th prince walked out of the Federation of Inscription. His face was gloomy and his heart was filled with anger. How irritating this is. In the past, Zhang Ruo Chen was a waste who didn't dare to hit me back when I slapped him. But now, he is stronger than me unexpectedly. How could his talent be so high? How could it be? The 8th prince was gnashing his teeth in anger when he saw an ancient roan antelope ancient carriage outside the Federation of Inscription. That was the carriage of Zhang Ruo Chen. At the moment, Yun was silently sitting in the carriage waiting for Zhang Ruo Chen and looking at the Federation of Inscription now and then. Seeing the 8th prince walking toward her, she was so scared that she saluted immediately and said, "Greetings, Your Highness." He looked cold-blooded and said, take me back to the palace. Yun felt reluctant and embarrassed and said in fear, but this is the 9th prince's carriage. Bang! The 8th prince slapped Yun so hard that it made Yun fly 3 meters away. Yun's face was swollen and bloodshot with a 5-fingered handprint appearing on her face immediately. She was spitting blood constantly with a dizzy head and a dislocated jaw. And she felt like she was going to die. The 8th prince stomped on her and said with a fierce look, "The 9th prince is a prince, am I not a prince? You are just a maidservant, how dare you refuse to follow my order? Believe it or not, I can make your parents become the food of savage beasts and make you turn into a worthless prostitute with just a word." After that, the 8th prince got on the carriage and said, "Drive, or I will make your life a living hell." Yun felt so frightened. As she was just a maidservant, her whole family would be destroyed by one word from the 8th prince. She stood up hard, sat on the carriage enduring the pain on her face, and drove back to the palace, sitting on the carriage and wringing his hands with grim eyes. The 8th prince thought, "Zhang Ruo Chen, you have surely gained some kind of precious treasure. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to become so excellent in 3 months. As long as I have control over concubine Lin and make use of her life to force him to hand over the treasure, I have a chance to make huge progress in my cultivation and become a master of martial arts. After I become a martial arts master, Zhang Ruochen will definitely be the first person who I kill. By that time, Shan Xiangling, that dishonorable woman, will become my plaything." Ha! The street was desolate at night, passers-by became fewer and fewer. 2 men in black stood on the roof beside the street and stared at the roan antelope ancient carriage passing below. "Is that the carriage of the 9th prince?" the taller and thinner man whispered. He was carrying a wire bow and 10 thunder arrows on his back and exuded a murderous coldness. The chunky one sneered and said, "It must be him. Look at the maidservant who is driving, she looks exactly the same as the portrait given by Miss Han. She is the maidservant of the 9th prince. The 9th prince must be in the carriage right now. Ha! It is so exciting to assassinate a prince. Once we have finished the mission, Miss Han will surely give us a generous reward." The taller and thinner man in black drew a thunder arrow and fitted it to his bow. Then, he aimed at the carriage, ready to let it fly. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 38. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator, Transin Editor, Transin. There were currently 19 meridians inside Zhang Ruochen's body, who was classified as outstanding among all the warriors. With a cultivation in the medium state of the Yellow Realm, Zhang Ruochen was able to fight against warriors in the completion of the Yellow Realm. If he could open up 27 meridians when he was breaking through to the final state of the Yellow Realm, he could not imagine how powerful his fighting ability would be. When Zhang Ruochen took the first bottle of mirror washing liquid, it took him an hour to open the 20th meridian. The second bottle of liquid took him 4 hours to open the 21st meridian. When he took the third bottle of liquid, it took him 4 days to open the 22nd meridian. He continued by taking the 4th bottle of liquid. The 23rd meridian opened after quite a long time. The more meridians in his body, the more difficult it was for him to open them. Having opened up 4 meridians consecutively, Zhang Ruochen had used up half of his genuine qi. He felt exhausted and pain went all over his body. As he was an experienced warrior in his last lifetime, he did not force himself to open the 24th meridian. Rather, he stopped and decided to take some rest. He then took a triple purity genuine qi pill, and with the help of the pill's spirit, his genuine qi would recover after all the energy that he had expended. Shortly afterward, the genuine qi in his qi pool had been fully recovered. His entire body was full of power and energy. Later, Zhang Ruochen placed the graph of meridians of the scripture of Emperor Ming's Empyrean in front of him and started studying. Zhang Ruochen had memorized all 36 meridian paths on the scripture solidly. Even when he closed his eyes, the scripture appeared clearly in his mind. In Zhang Ruochen's last lifetime, altogether he had opened up 33 meridians. No matter how hard he tried, he could not open the remaining 3. The remaining 3 meridians were the chakras, the vessel of spiritual blood, and the vessel of spirit. These 3 meridians were all mysterious. They overrode either the knowledge of normal warriors or their martial arts. Otherwise, with the talent that Zhang Ruo Chen had in his last lifetime, it was impossible that he was unable to open all the meridians. The chakras referred to the growth ring of a warrior. It was known that trees would grow a spiral-shaped growth ring. Yet, after practicing the scripture of Emperor Ming's Empyrean, Zhang Ruochen realized that even human warriors would be able to develop a growth ring. The only condition for warriors to cultivate a growth ring was that the warriors had to open up the chakras under their skin. For each layer of growth ring, there was a layer of leather armor. A layer of growth ring would increase after each year of practice. The defensive power of the skin would also be greatly enhanced. The growth ring of a warrior was incredibly thin, so people would not be able to see it. Even warriors who had practiced 100 years and cultivated 100 layers of growth rings, the thickness of their skin had no difference compared to ordinary citizens. The defensive power of their skin had reached a terrifying level, so they were impervious to bullets and swords. The vessel of spiritual blood referred to the meridians which linked to the blood. Blood was in a liquid state. If warriors wanted to cultivate a gaseous state meridian inside the liquid state of blood, this was completely beyond their knowledge. Even Zhang Ruochen was suspicious about whether or not the vessel of spiritual blood actually existed. The vessel of spirit was even more unexplainable. It was recorded in the scripture of Emperor Ming's Empyrean that the vessel of spirit existed in the meridians of a warrior's soul. It linked a warrior's body and soul together. Once warriors cultivated the vessel of spirit, they would be able to see their soul. They could also control their soul apart from their body. What they had to do to make it work was just a thought. When they thought about a certain idea, their soul could fly and see what happened a mile away. The chakras, the vessel of spiritual blood and the vessel of spirit were all incredibly mysterious and exceeded the knowledge of ordinary warriors. Even with the talent and capability in Zhang Ruochen's last lifetime, he could not open up these 3 meridians. In this life, Zhang Ruochen was determined to seize every opportunity to elevate his capability. If he was able to open these 3 mysterious meridians, his physical quality would definitely be stronger and much more powerful than it was in his last lifetime. Among all 3 meridians, the chakras seem to be the highest possible in existence. Maybe I will be able to open them up. Zhang Ruochen stared at the graph of meridians and pondered on the chakras. He wanted to open this meridian up under his skin. After 9 days of studying, Zhang Ruochen came up with some ideas. He transferred the genuine qi into his skin. However, he failed with every trial and was badly hurt. Does it even exist? Zhang Ruochen questioned himself. No matter how hard and how many times he had tried, he could not open the meridians. He was sweaty. His shirt was all wet because of the numerous trials. Suddenly, he heard a voice coming from the yin-yang wooden graph. Hey, young man. Let me tell you. The chakras do exist. Just the way you are trying to obtain them is wrong. My method is wrong. So what's the correct way to open them? Tell me now. Zhang Ruochen said. That voice responded by saying, haha. If you let me get out of this wooden graph, I'll tell you. Well, don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you. The yin-yang wooden graph will suppress me if I hurt you. As long as you think about it, you can put me back into the graph. When Zhang Ruochen thought about it, the yin-yang wooden graph dashed out immediately from his glabella. He held the yin-yang wooden graph firmly. He started transferring the genuine qi to the graph in order to unleash the sealing stamp, and he released the giant black cat. You can tell me now. How can I open the chakras? Zhang Ruochen asked. The giant black cat said, the answer is already in your hands. In my hands? Zhang Ruochen looked at the sacred prime tree on the graph. It seemed that he figured something out and yelled, the sacred prime tree? The giant black cat nodded and said, if you see yourself as a human being, surely you won't be able to open the chakras. Now imagine, if you see yourself as a tree, maybe it'll be easier for you to obtain it. Zhang Ruochen then walked out from the blind area in the past as if there was a flashlight to guide him out. He sat on the ground and stared at the sacred prime tree in the graph, trying to imagine that he was the tree. It had been 2 days since he moved an inch, as if he had turned into a 1,000-year-old divine tree. Even his pulse seemed to have stopped. At this moment, he had already entered a realm which was a mystery of mysteries. He took a bottle of marrow washing liquid unconsciously and started opening up the chakras. after 2 hours of practicing, there was a layer of a faint halo shining on Zhang Ruo Chen's skin, a white, thin line circulated on his skin as if he had been wrapped by a massive net. The giant black cat widened his eyes with surprise and thought, "Oh my god, he made it. Nyama, do the chakras really exist?" In fact, the giant black cat knew nothing about the chakras. He randomly told Zhang Ruo Chen that he knew the key to open the chakras to help himself get out of the graph. "I made it." He was extremely excited about the fact that he had finally opened up the chakras. The meridians looked like a gleam of light, flowing around on his skin. Once he revolved the genuine chi, there would be a transparent armor on the surface of his skin. Even if he were to stand still and let people attack him freely, random swords would never be able to pierce through his skin. This was his 24th meridian. By opening the tough chakras, it greatly boosted Zhang Ruo Chen's confidence. He did not waste his time resting but continued opening other meridians so that he could break through to the final state of the Yellow Realm. Another 4 days had gone by. Altogether, he opened up 27 meridians and reached the final state of the Yellow Realm. The capacity of his chi pool had enlarged 10 times more after breaking through the realm. 27 meridians. That's awesome. If I keep working hard, my capability will go beyond my last lifetime. With my power now, I guess I would be able to knock away the warriors in the completion of the Yellow Realm. Warriors who reached the completion of the Yellow Realm could break out the strength of 25 bulls. When Zhang Ruo Chen first broke through to the medium state of the Yellow Realm and displayed the dragon and elephant prajna palm, he successfully erupted with the strength of 25 bulls. Furthermore, when he was at the peak at this stage, he broke out the strength of 36 bulls. And now, he had already made it to the final state of the Yellow Realm. Zhang Ruo Chen would easily break out the strength of 36 bulls with a random palm. If he demonstrated the dragon and elephant prajna palm, it was sure that his power level would equal 49 bulls. The best explosiveness of Zhang Ruo Chen at the moment was 49 bulls, which fairly doubled up the power of warriors who had reached the completion of the Yellow Realm. There was a myth saying that if the warriors in the Yellow Realm could reach the power of 100 bulls, it would be called the Power of Realm. However, no one had exceeded such a limit. Not even those with magnificent martial techniques and physical quality. In fact, Zhang Ruo Chen had never encountered anybody who could break out the strength of 100 bulls. There were warriors whose power was close but no one had ever reached 100, the perfect number. When he reached the peak of the Yellow Realm in his previous life, he could only break out the strength of 94 bulls. "Young man, I have to say, you have almost caught up with me when I was young," said the giant black cat, flattering him. Zhang Ruo Chen eventually calmed himself down from the practice. He glanced at the giant black cat and said, "There are 8 basic types of inscriptions of space. I can possibly carve 6 of them: the inscription of pointy, the inscription of transverse type, the inscription of lengthways, the inscription of height, the inscription of line type, and the inscription flat type. However, I can't carve the remaining 2 inscriptions no matter how hard I try. Do you know what's happening to me?" "What? You're able to carve 6 types of inscriptions now? How is that even possible?" The giant black cat could not believe what Zhang Ruo Chen had just said and kept shaking his head. Indeed, before Zhang Ruo Chen broke through to the final state of the Yellow Realm, he was able to carve 6 basic types of inscriptions of space. Such a talented warrior, with no doubt about what he had achieved with 3 months of practice. In order to convince the giant black cat, Zhang Ruo Chen took out 6 pieces of spiritual paper and carved the inscriptions on the paper using the inscription pen at his fastest speed. Shortly after, 6 inscriptions were displayed on the spiritual paper. The giant black cat crawled toward and stared at the inscriptions on the 6 pieces of spiritual paper. He nodded and praised it. "This is wonderful. You can surely carve all the 6 basic types of inscriptions of space. You've mentioned that you still can't carve the remaining 2 inscriptions, the inscription of strain type and the inscription of condensing, right? Well, it's normal, as these 2 inscriptions are a lot more difficult and complex compared to the other 6. Do you have any carved jade with you, young man?" "Carved jade?" Zhang Ruo Chen did not understand what it was saying, but he still took down the jade thumb ring from his thumb and placed it on his palm. He asked, "Why do you ask for carved jade?" The giant black cat quickly glanced at the jade thumb ring. He nodded and said, the quality of the jade is pretty good. You can use it for refining weapons. Refining weapons? Zhang Ruo Chen asked with hesitation. The giant black cat responded, yes. Refining weapons. You have already learned how to carve the 6 basic types of inscriptions of space. You will be able to refine the simplest genuine martial arm of space, the spatial ring. In the entire Yinwu commandery, you are the only one who has the ability to refine the ring. What is the spatial ring? Zhang Ruo Chen's mind was full of questions. The cat continued, a spatial ring is an independent space being constructed inside the ring. If your spiritual power and cultivation are powerful enough, the ring you define will be able to store a mountain or even the world. By all means, if you can create a space 1 cubic meter in size with your cultivation at the moment, that will be a very decent achievement. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 39. You are listening at NavelFull.audio. Translator, Transin Editor, Transen.in. Zhang Ruo Chen's last lifetime, he had seen a treasure called the Shumi Primordial Bag. It seemed to be only a palm-sized bag, yet it was able to store an entire mountain. The Shumi Primordial Bag was classified as a highly precious treasure. There were less than 10 pieces in all of Kunlun's Field. It was said that it had been passed on since the medieval ancient times and was refined and worshipped by a saint. Many of the weapon refiners always wanted to counterfeit the Shumi Primordial Bag. Not a single person had succeeded. In Zhang Ruo Chen's previous life, he was Emperor Ming's son. He was well educated and had a broad knowledge of the world. Hence, he knew that treasures like the Shumi Primordial Bag existed, opening an independent space inside the ring. Isn't that the same characteristic as the Shumi Primordial Bag? Zhang Ruo Chen was shocked by its function. The giant black cat said, the Shumi Primordial Bag is a space treasure refined by Saint Monk Shumi. I'm sure there will only be a few pieces left through the progress of passing on the space treasure until this era. Each of them is extremely valuable. I can't believe that the Shumi Primordial Bag was refined by Saint Monk Shumi. Well, I also want to try refining a space treasure with my capability. Zhang Ruo Chen was excited. He thought that if he could refine and produce space treasures, by then he could sell them at a very costly price and the profit would be used to buy more spiritual pills for his cultivation. He gripped the inscription pen hard and transferred and implanted the genuine chi from his body into the inscription pen. The inscription pen instantly displayed a white splendor. A gleam of white light extended from the top of the pen and entered the jade thumb ring. Zhang Ruo Chen paid full attention to control the inscription pen and carved the base of the inscription of space inside the jade thumb ring. Drawing the inscription was a task that required extreme meticulousness and consumed a lot of spiritual power. Boom. The first inscription had been successfully carved. Zhang Ruo Chen did not stop but kept up the good work. Shortly after, he had finished the second inscription. The third inscription, the fourth one, the fifth one, the sixth one. When Zhang Ruo Chen finished carving all 6 inscriptions, there was a layer of a light halo displaying on the surface of the jade thumb ring. A strand of the white inscription was flowing around the thumb ring. Soon, the halo disappeared and the white inscription penetrated into the thumb ring. Have I made it? Zhang Ruo Chen wondered. In order to clarify it, he immediately transferred a streak of genuine chi into the jade thumb ring. On the jade thumb ring's surface, there was a layer of halo and gleams of the white inscription. Zhang Ruo Chen touched the ring and felt like his entire arm had entered the ring. I made it. The area inside the jade thumb ring is 1 cubic meter large. Within the spatial ring, it contains 6 streaks of the inscription, which classifies as a third-class genuine martial arm, said an ecstatic Zhang Ruo Chen. Bear in mind that this was his first time refining a spatial ring and he had successfully made it. The giant black cat said, don't be overjoyed with your little achievement. You've only learned how to carve 6 basic types of inscriptions of space, yet you're still unable to control the size of the space when you refine it. Wait until you learn how to carve the remaining 2 inscriptions, the inscription of strain type and the inscription of condensing, then the space that you refine in the spatial ring will definitely larger than 1 cubic meter. Moreover, what you have done is to carve the inscription on the jade thumb ring. The inscription is not solid enough. It will probably dispel with a slight bump. What you have to do is to utilize the method of refining weapons. By worshipping the spatial ring with fire, it empowers the inscription on the spatial ring. However, if you fail properly to manage the heat, you will probably destroy the spatial ring. The giant cat expressed a certain level of seriousness. Zhang Ruo Chen nodded and said, I get it. I'll head to the Federation of Inscription and borrow the weapon refining stove from Xuanhuan and, hopefully, I can fully refine the spatial ring. Wait. I'm going with you. PTHF. The giant black cat thrust its feet and flew out from the internal space of the time and space spinel. Looking at the giant black cat who stood in Zhang Ruochen's room, Zhang Ruochen furrowed his eyebrows and decided to put it back into the yin-yang wooden graph. Such a tricky cat could see through what Zhang Ruochen had in mind. He lay on the ground and cried, Young man, I have been imprisoned in the yin-yang wooden graph for more than 100,000 years. Though I have made massive mistakes, all these years I have atoned for my sins. I'm only a cat. I'm longing for freedom, longing for a brand new life. Mew. Besides, I am the one who guided you to open up the chakras. Without my help, do you think you will be able to refine the spatial ring? Considering that it had helped Zhang Ruochen to break through the chakras, he said, Okay. I'll let you stay outside of the yin-yang wooden graph for the time being. But, you have to stay next to me the entire time. Of course. The giant black cat rolled on the ground with excitement. Suddenly, Zhang Ruochen heard footsteps outside his room. My ninth brother, are you still secluding yourself for refining? It was the ninth commandery princess Zhang Yushi's voice. Zhang Ruochen opened the door and left the room. He looked at the ninth commandery princess who waited outside his room and asked, My ninth sister, what can I help you with? The ninth commandery princess was beautiful today. She was carrying a sword in forest green, wearing a silver silk pleated dress with her shiny black hair rolled up on the top of her head as well as a green belt tied around her tiny waist. She was so excited when she saw Zhang Ruochen. I heard that your cultivation has reached the medium state of the yellow realm. Therefore, I want to fight with you as a form of practice. It had been less than 2 months since the year-end assessment. She could never foresee that Zhang Ruochen had not only broken through to the medium state, but had also reached the final state. Zhang Ruochen asked, I guess my ninth sister has also made some improvements and reached the final state of the yellow realm. She slightly shook her head and said, Me? It's not easy to reach the final state of the yellow realm. I'm only at the peak of the medium state. But, I've practiced my sword comprehension to the realm of sword following the heart. I think that even though I haven't yet reached the final state, I'll be able to defeat warriors in the final state. Zhang Ruochen nodded his head in consent. It was indeed hard for warriors who reached the realm of sword following the heart at such a young age. In fact, both the ninth commandery princess and Lin Ningxian had just reached the initial stage of the sword following the heart. Yet, Zhang Ruochen had made it to the advanced stage of the sword following the heart and was thus beyond comparison. With any random sword technique, Zhang Ruochen would easily defeat them. He responded to Zhang Yushi's request, but I don't have time to practice with you now. I need to head over to the Federation of Inscription. Never mind. I can go with you. Let's take my Cloud Rabbit lunar rover. Her eyes glittered. It seemed that the ninth commandery princess just wanted to spend time with Zhang Ruochen rather than practice martial arts with him. Then, she walked toward Zhang Ruochen and held his arms as if she was not evasive to demonstrate a sense of intimacy. Zhang Ruochen looked a bit shy. Although they were brother and sister of different mothers, they were still attached by the blood of the same father. Soon after, he got more comfortable with it. Mew. The fat black cat walked out of Zhang Ruochen's room casually as if it had gone for a walk. At the moment, the cat's size had been greatly minimized compared to its original size. It was just a bit bigger than a normal cat. My ninth brother, you have a cat. It's so adorable. What's its name? The ninth commandery princess lifted the cat up and touched its skin softly. Mew. The fat black cat pretended to behave itself. It rolled its eyeballs, stuck its tongue out, and licked the fingers of the ninth commandery princess slightly. Zhang Ruochen glanced at the cat, shook his head and said, Just call it Blackie. Blackie. She stretched out her finger and moderately patted Blackie's head. She could not imagine how angry it was to be called Blackie, as it once was king of slaughter in its previous life. That is such an offense to me. It's definitely an insult. Fine. I'll just tolerate him. If I don't behave myself, he will send me back into the wooden graph, Blackie thought. Riding on the 9th Commandery Princess carriage, Zhang Ruo Chen arrived at the Federation of Inscription again. He borrowed the weapon refining stove from Xuanhuan in order to refine and worship the spatial ring. The process of worshipping the spatial ring went unexpectedly well. Soon after, the first spatial ring had been produced and turned out as an actual product. A third-class genuine martial arm, the spatial ring. Xuanhuan stood aside observing the process of refining. He whispered while observing Zhang Ruo Chen, the 9th prince is definitely an inborn master of refining weapons. It's his very first time to refine a weapon and he is able to control the heat with such an amazing technique. This is no doubt admirable. Zhang Ruo Chen did not act arrogantly, but asked Xuanhuan with courtesy, with my control over the heat, which class do you think my technique in terms of a weapon refiner is? The peak of a first-class weapon refiner. Xuanhuan continued, be mindful, this is your first time worshipping a genuine martial arm and you've already fully shown your talent. I believe that you will reach the second class of a weapon refiner very soon. Being a second-class weapon refiner could enjoy a superior status in Yinwu Commandery. Moreover, if weapon refiners were willing to rely on a particular sect or a large-scale family, they could immediately enjoy the same treatment as a presbyter, or a status even more superior than a normal presbyter. Sigh. My spiritual power has reached the third class of a weapon refiner. Yet, my control over the heat is still not on point. Therefore, I can only classify myself as a second-class weapon refiner. Xuanhuan groaned. The spiritual power of a first-class weapon refiner was usually between level 15 to 20, for a second-class weapon refiner, it was between the levels 20 to 25, for a third-class weapon refiner, it was between level 25 to 30, last but not least. The spiritual power of a fourth-class weapon refiner was between levels 30 to 35, the most senior master weapon refiner in Yinwu Commandery was Kong Tong, who was a fourth-class weapon refiner. Her spiritual power had reached level 34 and thus was called a master of spiritual power in Yinwu Commandery. Her status in Yinwu Commandery was more or less the same as Yinwu Commandery Prince. If Yinwu Commandery Prince wanted her to refine his weapons, he had to visit her in person. He had to negotiate with her in a fair and equal manner, because she was not only a fourth-class weapon refiner, but also chief of the Federation of Inscription in Yinwu Commandery. Her status was extremely magnificent. Xuanhuan asked with curiosity, my 9th prince, what exactly is the thumb ring that you're refining? Is it a kind of defensive genuine martial arm? Zhang Ruo Chen smiled and said, well, let's keep that a secret for the time being. Shortly after, he left the weapon refining room. There was something bothering him in his mind, which was that he also wanted to buy a weapon refining stove. However, Qingxian Pavilion sold the best weapon refining stoves in Yinwu City. If Zhang Ruo Chen wanted to pay a visit to it, he had no choice but to encounter the attractive hostess who had the ability to steal men's souls. Qingya was a very coquettish, charming, and attractive woman, who took the initiative to seduce Zhang Ruo Chen. She would make him commit a crime. It gave Zhang Ruo Chen a headache when he thought of this. By encountering such a lovely woman, he wondered if there was any man who could control himself to not be dominated by her. If Yushi goes with me, maybe the hostess will slightly behave herself. Zhang Ruo Chen finally thought of an idea to prevent himself from falling into the hostess' seduction. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 40. You are listening at NavelFull.audio. Translator, Transin Editor, Transin. While walking out of the refining room, Zhang Ruo Chen saw the 9th Commandery Princess Zhang Yushi and Shan Xiangling. Both of them were the startling beauties of Yinwu Commandery and looked slim and pure, displaying a sense of pleasure. At that moment, they were scrambling to play with Blackie. Blackie, I know that you want to play with me, right? The 9th Commandery Princess said with a threat. Shan Xiangling, however, talked to Blackie in a soft voice with her red lips shining and eyes blinking. Blackie, let's go to enjoy the best cuisine in the commandery. The ninth commandery princess grabbed Blackie's ears, while Shan Xiangling grasped its tail. They both kept dragging Blackie toward themselves, as if they were going to tear it apart. The pain of being a toy between two pretties was unspeakable. Yet, Blackie was frightened that Zhang Ruo Chen would send it back into the wooden graph. Otherwise, it would have killed them for what they had done to it. This is absolutely absurd. I once was king of slaughter. From when have I become two women's toy? Creak. The iron door of the refining room opened, seeing Zhang Ruochen and Xuanhuan walk out of the room. The ninth commandery princess and Shan Xiangling let Blackie free almost at the same time. In a second, they returned to elegant ladies. The ninth commandery princess slightly fixed her sleeves and dress, looking classic and elegant, while Shan Xiangling softly touched her long hair, presenting a feminine and pure image. Boom. Blackie lost its bearings, falling on the ground heavily with its eyes were full of stars. No one could imagine that two of the four beauties in Yinwu Commandery would scramble for a cat if one did not see it in person. Were they scrambling just for a cat? It was the fact that both of the ninth commandery princess and Shan Xiangling were beautiful and known as unrivaled beauties of the world. Any warrior would be honored to meet one of them. They wished they could dedicate all their assets just to see them smile. Whether or not they were one of the four beauties, it did not bother Zhang Ruochen. My ninth sister, please accompany me to Qingxian Pavilion. I need to buy a weapon refining stove. Sure. Let's go. With delight, the ninth commandery princess instantly lifted Blackie up, who was lying on the floor. She blinked at Shan Xiangling as if she was demonstrating her victory of having either Blackie or Zhang Ruochen. Your Highness, I also need to go to the Qingxian Pavilion. Can I join you both? Shan Xiangling's voice was always soft and displayed a sense of spirituality. Sure, why not? Zhang Ruochen did not think too much about it and let her join them. The distance between the Federation of Inscription and Qingxian Pavilion in the weapon market were quite close. Therefore, they did not ride in the carriage, but walked toward Qingxian Pavilion. Then, something that Zhang Ruochen did not anticipate happened. Everyone knew that both the ninth commandery princess and Shan Xiangling were exceptionally beautiful and were goddesses for lots of warriors. The people who followed after them were countless, as the line for waiting to meet them had extended from the Federation of Inscription to the gate of Yinwu City. It was as difficult as climbing into the sky for one who wanted to meet any one of the four beauties. Yet, two of them were following behind a young man today. It surely caused quite a sensation in the martial market. Isn't she the daughter of Master of the Red Cloud sect, Shan Xiangling, one of the four young beauties in Yinwu Commandery? She is exceptionally beautiful, as if she were a fairy coming out from the graph. How about the lady beside her? Her splendor is more or less the same as Miss Shan. How can you not know the ninth commandery princess, Zhang Yushi? She is called a beauty of Yinwu Commandery, just like Miss Shan. There are numerous followers wanting to approach her in Yinwu City. Most of them are superior with a strong martial cultivation. Not far away, there were two young men sitting opposite each other on a pavilion. They also glanced at Zhang Ruochen, Zhang Yushi, and Shan Xiangling as the three of them just walked by. Lu Qingfeng looked cold-blooded and stared at Zhang Ruochen. I can't believe both Shan Xiangling and the ninth commandery princess are accompanying him to the market. When did such a young man get so popular in Yinwu City? The man sitting opposite Lu Qingfeng was called Situ Gu, Situ Lingjiang's elder brother. Situ Gu chuckled. Oh, my brother. Don't you recognize him? He is Yinwu Commandery Prince's ninth son. Not long ago, he obtained first place in the year-end assessment. He is now the hottest genius in Yinwu City. Well, what beauty doesn't love a genius? Not to mention his superior status. He has surely become the idol of young women. Lu Qingfeng giggled. I know who he is. Being first in the year-end assessment, so what? He's just the first among the royal family and their relatives in the younger generation. Compared to the entire young generation in Yinwu City, I guess he can fairly make into the top 10. Yet, I bet ranking in the top 20 in Yinwu Commandery will be too much hard work for him. It makes sense though. His cultivation has just reached the dawn state of the Yellow Realm. Ha! Lu Qingfeng smirked slightly and looked contemptuous. Situ Gu had watched the fight between Zhang Ruochen and Situ Linjiang. He clearly knew that Zhang Ruochen was indeed magnificent. Although his cultivation is in the dawn state of the Yellow Realm, he is able to defeat the young geniuses in the final state. He is not someone to mess with. When he breaks through to the medium state of the Yellow Realm, I guess he can still barely confront the warriors in the completion. Lu Qingfeng said, how is that possible? The meridians inside a completion warrior's body are all fixed. It's called succeeding the body of martial arts. It's incomparable to the warriors in the final state of the Yellow Realm. Even if he breaks through to the medium state, he will be defeated by the completion warriors within 3 moves. Situ Gu giggled. With your martial cultivation, it's more than sufficient to make it to the top 3 among the young warriors in Yinwu City. Moreover, you're in the peak of the completion of the Yellow Realm. No matter how talented the 9th prince is, he won't be strong enough to compete with you until he makes it to the completion stage. The so-called young generation referred to the warriors who were under age 20. Lu Qingfeng had reached the completion of the Yellow Realm at 17 years old. Excluding the 7th prince, who had incredible talent and had always been ranked ahead of him, none of the other geniuses were capable of withstanding any of his moves during a fight. There was a delighted smile on Lu Qingfeng's face. It's just a pity that the 9th prince is still so weak. Otherwise, he'd be classified as one of my strongest opponents. To be honest, I'm totally not concerned with his cultivation. Situ Gu chuckled. You're only interested in Miss Shan, aren't you? Unfortunately, she feels like she is more into the 9th prince. If you do like her, I suggest you take the initiative and talk to her. Otherwise, she will soon become the 9th prince's woman. Humph. My status in the Martial Market Bank is almost the same as the 9th prince's. Is that still a matter if I want a woman? Lu Qingfeng said with arrogance. Lu Xuanhuan, Lu Qingfeng's father, was the chief of the Martial Market Bank in Yinwu Commandery. The Martial Market Bank was financially powerful and had lured numerous strong warriors to support them. Lu Xuanhuan was seen as having a massive control over Yinwu Commandery's economy. Being Lu Xuanhuan's son, Lu Qingfeng was certainly a famous person in Yinwu Commandery. If he really loved Shan Xiangling, what he had to do was to express his feeling toward Master of the Red Cloud sect, who would certainly be more than ecstatic to marry his daughter off to Lu Qingfeng. It would only be beneficial if the Red Cloud sect could socialize with the Martial Market Bank. However, Lu Qingfeng did not want to marry Shan Xiangling. He just wanted to have fun with her and treated her like a prostitute. With his status and talent in martial arts, he had already found someone better for marriage. To Lu Qingfeng, Shan Xiangling was just a master's daughter and was only worth spending a night with. Afterward, he was going to dump her away. Qingxian Pavilion was located in the weapon market. Qinya was naked and her snow-white body was comfortably lying in a pool carved out of a jade stone. There was a creamy white liquid in the pool, emanating a vague icy air that completely wrapped her exquisite embossed figure. Her plumpy breasts and buttocks, tiny waist and slim, long legs, all were partly visible within the air. It was exceptionally attractive. If any men were to see such a beautiful scene, blood from their nose would surely spurt non-stop. At this moment, Mo Hanlon was sitting outside the pool with his whole body clenched tightly. He did not dare to look toward the pool as he asked with a faltering voice, "My hostess, we've eroded half of the financial affairs of the Martial Market Bank. They are no longer our competitor. Shall we start working on Lu Xuanhuan and dispelling the entire Martial Market Bank in Yinwu Commandery?" Qinya squinted her shining eyes, glistened her long eyelashes where drops of water fell from, one by one, her crystal-clear red lips slightly moved. There's no rush. The power of the Martial Market Bank is still strong. It's not as easy as it seems. Moreover, if we take down the Martial Market Bank, the official power of Yinwu Commandery will also get involved. It'll only make things complicated. Yinwu Commandery Prince will never allow us to take control over the economy of Yinwu Commandery. On top of that, the black market is longing to dismiss the Martial Market Bank. Let them fight first. We'll wait for the perfect moment and take them down. Mo Hanlon nodded in agreement. Tip, tap. The sound of footsteps resounded, a maidservant came inside and bowed toward the pool and said, "My hostess, the 9th prince has arrived at Qingxian Pavilion. He wants to buy a weapon refining stove, which is a 7th-class genuine martial arm." Mo Hanlon sat there freezing with his sweat. He had to seize this opportunity to leave the pool, so he stood up and said, "My hostess, let me welcome him." "Wait. Since it's the 9th prince, how can I not greet him in person?" Qinya opened her attractive eyes. She walked out of the pool, took a red, thin yarn and wrapped her seductive body. Water dropped on her white back and glided on the jade stone. Zhang Ruo Chen was the first ever man who was able to deal with her seduction. His spiritual power and determination were far greater than anyone else's, hence Qinya was very interested in him. Furthermore, she suspected that there was a superior warrior helping Zhang Ruo Chen. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to reach the dawn state of the Yellow Realm within 3 months. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible.